Join me as we learn Chumash for Tuesday, Parshas Behar-Bechukosai combined, and we continue in the laws pertaining to the real estate of how it's sold and how it may be redeemed and when it's allowed to be bought back. The Torah now tells us about concerning a home which was bought in a walled city. Well, yesterday we discussed about a home that was in a farmland and how and when it can be redeemed. Today we continue into a different type of home. When a man sells a residential home in a walled city, the redemption can take place only until the end of the year of sale. It's a period of the redemption of a full year. The word yamim refers to a year, will be the time that a person can do the redemption. Rashi, verse 29. Beis Moshe Virchema, Bayis Besoich Ir Mukefes Achema, a home that's in a walled city. Mimois Mishur Binun. What's considered a walled city? It has to be walled from the time of Joshua, who he was the one when the Jewish people conquered and settled in the land of Israel. Because he mentioned previously that when it comes to a farmland, one can redeem it from 2 years onward and any time he wants after those 2 years. But in the first 2 years, he's not able to redeem it. Here, the Torah has to tell us that the law is just the opposite here. It's the opposite of when it comes to a farmland. That if a person wants to redeem it in the first year, that he can redeem it. But after this, but after the first year, there's no longer a chance for him to redeem it. He can redeem. What can he redeem? Shalbayis of the home, meaning when he has that appointed time for that year, he's allowed to redeem the home. Yamim, the word yamim in this case means Yimei Shana Shlema Karim. It's called an entire year. We see this as well in the book of Genesis when Eliezer comes to pick up Rivka, where the brothers ask, Teishev Anaidi Tani Yam, and let the girl stay with us for another year. And the word Yamim refers to a year. Verse 30. What happens if the person does not redeem it after a complete year? Then the city that is in the city, then the home that is in the city, will then remain asher loy chema for the person who purchased it, latzmisus, for throughout the generations, that person who purchased it now stays his permanently. Latzmisus means permanently. Lakoineset to the one that buys it, lederesa for future generations. Lo yetze v'yevel, it does not go out in the Jubilee year. Rashi, v'kama bayis litzmitzus, the word litzmitzus means yotza mekecha shal meicher, it now leaves the ownership of the seller, and now it stays with the ownership of the buyer for eternity. The word loy, though it's written with an aleph, it is read with a vav, which means to him. Loy karinen to him. Amr Rabbi Seinu, the rabbis have explained, even though now it doesn't have a wall because the wall was already fell from the time of Yoshua, because there was a wall there prior to this. So therefore, it's considered a city, and therefore loy, no wall there now. That's why it's written with an aleph. But loy, it had a wall previously. Then Rashi adds to this and says, "V'ir nakva here." If you look at the word, it says "ir," which is hutzach lichtiv law. Technically, it should have written law because "ir" is feminine, so therefore the feminine terminology should have been used. Nikeva here, hutzach lichtiv law. Elameteich shetzarich lichtiv loy b'fnim. Tiknu libim seidus anifal alzeh. Because it wanted to write loy, that you would read it loy to him, and also it should write loy not, and wanted to give you this dual interpretation. Therefore, it said loy instead of law, to make sure that the two terminologies should fit with one another. Lo yetze b'yevel, it doesn't go out in the Jubilee year. Omer Absafra says, if I already know that the home is going to stay yours for eternity, why does it say doesn't go out in the Jubilee year? That even if the Jubilee year happens to be in the first year of the person buying it, he still does not go out, and it stays in the buyer's domain. Verse 31. In contrast to houses of walled cities, houses that are in open cities, that do not have a wall. saviv around them. Alsteya aretz yichashev, they could be considered as a field. Geula tiyalei, they always have the opportunity to be redeemed. Ubayovel yoytze, and they go out in the Jubilee year as well. Verse 31, Batei Chatzerim ketergumi pitzchen, meaning they're open. Ayaris psuchis mein chayma, cities that are open and do not have a wall. Yesharbe b'sefer Yeshua arim v'chatzereim v'chatzereisim v'tiroisim. We find this terminology used a lot in the book of Yeshua when it talks about the cities, those without a wall and those with a wall. I'll stay Aris Yichashev, Hadheim Besadis and Egalim Adiyevel. They are like the fields that can be redeemed until the Jubilee year. V'yetzim v'yevel abalim, and they go out in the Jubilee year to its original owners. Imloin Igalu, if they were not redeemed. Geula tiyalei, they have a redemption, meaning if the person wants to redeem it, good for him. With this, we see actually that the power that the owner, or the way it works for the law pertaining a house, which is in an open field, better than the actual farmland itself. A field, a farmland, you have to wait 2 years until a person can redeem it. However, when it comes to a home on an open field, that means when an unwalled city, you can redeem it right away, and it also goes back in the Jubilee year. Without any payment, it goes back to the original owner. Verse 32, however, there's an exception to all this. However, the cities of the Levites have unlimited rights of redemption. The houses of their cities are their landed property. What this means, as Rashi explains, there were 48 cities that were given to the Levites throughout amongst the cities of the land of Israel. The person can right away, let's say if a person bought it, the Levite can right away purchase it back. He doesn't have to wait 2 years. Even before 2 years. If they sold a field that was given to them within the 2,000 amas of the perimeter of their field and around their cities, or even if they sold a house in a walled city, they can always redeem it, and it's never considered the entirety of the property of the buyer. Even at the end of the year. Meaning, the very fact that it tells us Gu'ulas Oilam, that they can redeem it whenever they want, meaning that the Levite gets the exception in both cases. He has the leniency that he's able to buy it even within the first year, and he also has the leniency that he can always buy it back. It always will be the Levites. Verse 33, Vasher Yigal min Levim, and one that was redeemed from the Levites. If someone purchases a home from a Levite, then what happens is then the purchased house or the inherited city would leave the possession of the purchaser. Why? When would that be? By Yovel, in the Jubilee year, just like everybody else. It goes back to the Levite in the Jubilee year. Because the houses of the cities of the Levites are their inherited property, and therefore they were allotted these 48 cities, not like every other tribe that got a certain portion of land. And because of that, they have the unlimited rights of redemption. Verse 33, Rashi, if a person purchases a home or a city from them, and it goes back in the Jubilee year, the purchase of that home, or of the city, and it goes back to the original Levite that sold it. It does not stay for eternity for the buyer. Like any other walled city, like we mentioned before, like goes Latzmisus, that it always stays with the buyer. However, this case, when it comes to a Levite, it goes back to the Levite. The word geula here, redemption, means that he can always buy it back. Another explanation of how to explain this is as follows. Because it said it already in verse 32, that they always have the opportunity to redeem it. I would have thought that this is only referring to an Israelite that may have bought a home from a Levite. But a Levite that bought it from a Levite, it should be the same laws as if it was an Israelite buying from an Israelite, and therefore it should always belong to the buyer and never go back to the purchaser if it was bought within the year of a walled city. Talmud Loimar. Therefore, the Torah goes on to tell us, if it was purchased, if it was redeemed by a Levi, even if a Levite purchased it from another Levi, which then you can argue, well, the Levite also got the gift. Still in all, it goes back to the original Levi in the Jubilee year. Now this comes another mitzvah. Hareza mitzvah cheres. She'im legoela, that if the person did not redeem it, yoytze beyevel, it goes back in the Jubilee year to the original owner. The eine nechlat, it doesn't stay permanently l'seif shanas for the end of the year, but by Yisrael in the home of the property of the Israelite. What's the reason? The Torah is giving us a reason. The Levites did not get an inheritance, a portion of fields and vineyards in the same vast amount like all the other tribes. They got cities and places to live. Therefore, their cities, their homes are like the fields and like the farmland, and the same laws that apply to the farmland would apply to the homes of the Levites. This way, they should not lose their property and thereby diminishing their real estate. Verse 34, Usadei migrash aleim, and a field that is in open areas of the Levites, lo yimacher, cannot be sold, ki achuzas olam hu lahem, because this is an eternal inheritance for them. Rashi, what is this referring to? This is not mecher gizbar. When we talk about not that it can't be sold at all, where it's referring to a certain type of selling, meaning there's a certain law that when it comes to Hagdish, as we're going to learn in Parshas Bechukosai as well, that when a person dedicates something to the Holy Temple doesn't have place for real estate. Where are they going to keep all these fields and manage it? So therefore there was a treasurer who would take the field and he would then sell it, and then he would have to use the money for holy opportunities. Therefore over here it's or fixing the place at the Holy Temple, whatever it was used for. Over here it's talking about as follows. That if a Levite dedicated his field for holiness, and he never redeemed it, and then the treasurer went and sold the field because since nobody ever bought it, nobody ever purchased, the owner himself never redeemed it. So generally in such a case, a field would go to the Kohen in the Jubilee year, and Commissioner Israel, like by Israelites. If the treasurer will sell it at this field to somebody else, they would never be able to redeem it. Why? Because once it's already sold by the treasurer, it's already dedicated to the Holy Temple, the treasurer already sold the field, there's no taking it back because it's already moved to hands and it goes to a Kohen. Avol ben Levi, when it comes to a Levite, the treasurer's field, even though the treasurer may have sold it, the Levite can always purchase it back. Goya la'olam, he gets it back. The Torah now goes on to tell us the laws about charity and taking care of those people that are less fortunate. If your brother is becoming destitute and therefore you must support him, you have to give him that support. Ger, whether it's a convert, v'toishav, or a resident, that he should be able to live with you. Rashi, you will support him. Don't wait until the person completely falls. And then it'll be very difficult to get him up. Support him before he falls all the way down, before he's about to fall, and thereby avoiding the terrible tragedy of him falling completely. What does this compare to? Imagine a donkey is carrying a load. While the donkey still has the load on his back, you just need a little bit of adjustment. And therefore, one person can come and fix it. But it's the moment that load falls to the ground, even 5 people can pick up that load. What does it mean, a convert and a resident? Even if he's only a convert, meaning that he's a convert that converted to Judaism. Or he's a resident. What's the difference? What's a resident? If he accepts upon himself the 7 Noachide laws, and primarily not to serve idol worship, but he still eats non-kosher like a non-Jew, he's considered a resident, and you have the obligation to help him out as well. Verse 36, the laws pertaining interest. You must not take from him interest, and interest, different types of interest, neshech and tarbis, as we're soon going to see. Thereby fearing God, and your brother must live with you. Neshech v'sarbis, these are 2 terminologies of interest. Chad shavinu rabbanon, the rabbi said this is all referring to the same thing. Neshech, the difference is only neshech means, it comes from the word of a snake, that he takes a little bit, the interest comes a little bit little, and tarbis is that you add on a surcharge onto the loan that you give the individual. Both of the cases, you're taking a payment for the loan, and it's not an interest-free loan. The rabbi said that they're both the same thing, but why does the Torah mention it two times, to show that a person abrogates two desecrations, two negative commandments by doing that? Why does it conclude by saying you must fear God? Because since it's very enticing and a person would really desire to take a little bit of a surcharge and can justify it as well and saying, listen, I'm getting the guy a loan, what's the big deal if I make a little money off it? I'm giving money that I no longer have, and now the borrower is able to use it. Why can't I get something from it? And not only that, he justifies the reason for it, and because of that we find in Jewish law, it's one of the only places where it says, ma'oid, ma'oid, a person has to be very careful because of the justification. Therefore, God says, that I know exactly what's going on, and I know what you're feeling, but at the same time, if you try to cheat the system, God knows what's happening. Or a person says, he loans the money from that money, and he claims that it's the non-Jews. This way, this way he can loan it to a Jew by taking interest. This is something which is given over to a person's thought and mind, and the only one that can know what's going on in your own thoughts and minds is God. Therefore, he says you must fear God, because God knows exactly what's in your heart and your desires and what it will and cause you to do. The Torah then continues, Al tikach mi es kaspecha, verse 36. Verse 37. Es kaspecha leisiton lebeneshech. Your money, should not give him on the condition of paying interest. Ubemarbis leisiten achlecha. And you must not give your food on the condition of interest as well. Verse 38. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, God that took you out of the land of Egypt, said it's Canaan, to give you the land of Canaan, to be for you a God. Verse 38, Rashi, I was able to determine who was a firstborn and who was not a firstborn. So too I'm able to determine and see, when you're loaning money interest, are you saying it's your money and you're claiming it's the non-Jews, or it's really your money and what you're doing? Therefore, I can differentiate and distinguish and see, and the person who does it will be liable for what he does. Another explanation is, I took you out of the land of Egypt, on the condition that you should accept my commandments, even at times when it's difficult, as the prohibition of interest, which can be difficult at times, but thereby is the reason why I took you out of the land of Egypt. To give you the land of Canaan, you're getting the land of Canaan, you're getting the land of Israel, because of the reward, of the investment that you put in to observe the commandments. Any person who lives in the land of Israel, I am their God. One who leaves the land of Israel for no reason, it's as if he served idolatry. This concludes the third Torah reading of Parshas Behar-Bechukosai when they are combined.